Hey, it's Zoe, and we're talking about boundless leadership. And in boundless leadership, we look at how to blast barriers and bust limits. Doesn't that sound very American? I love it. And specifically, we're looking at culture, strategy, and personal excellence. And today we're looking at the 9 principles of what it takes to be an amplifier. Let's do it.
Welcome to the Zoe Routh Leadership Podcast, your source of strategies and insights to make you a better leader. Influence, improve, inspire.
Well, I'm sitting in my new recording studio, I say with air quotes, because it really is not much of a recording studio, but I'm looking to find the best place to record so the quality audio is best for you. And at the moment, I've settled on my guest bedroom, sitting on the bed. I'm here with my dandelion tea with a splash of almond milk, and I am fasting. So I've been fasting, doing this intermittent fasting now for the last 2 months, which basically means that I fast for 16 hours. So at the end of dinner, I don't eat again until around 11:30, 12 o'clock. I also do carb cycling and high-intensity interval training, all this with the mission to change my body composition. So this is something I've been on a I've been on a focus for the last couple months, and it's working. At first it didn't, because I was only looking at the scale, and the scale lies. You can totally change your body composition and the number doesn't move. And so in the program that I'm in, they talk about that. They say, look, don't focus on the scale, because you can totally shift what your body is doing and then the scale stays the same. You add muscle, you lose fat, and it all equals the same. So I was getting frustrated because the results weren't showing up on the scale. And then they were, because I took before and after photos, and my body composition has changed significantly, even if the scale hasn't. All this kind of feeds into 3 important things that happened to me in the last 12 hours that I want to share with you, which has led to this podcast. I know, it sounds very dramatic, right? Well, the first one was yesterday, sitting on the late afternoon on my deck, beautiful afternoon, waiting for Rob to come back from golf. And I was bored and a bit lonely, which is weird, right? Because I'm in a beautiful place. I'm living the life I've always wanted. I have nothing that I lack for. It's all good. And yet I was bored and lonely. And the question that came up for me is, what is a life well lived? What is a life well lived? And I had this nagging feeling that maybe I should be doing something different, which is funny because that last podcast was about being. And here I was obsessing about, am I doing everything I should be doing? Am I making the contribution I should be making? Am I wasting my time? And it really kind of dug into me a little bit. And I haven't come up with a complete answer around this. I think it's something that I'm going to think deeply on for what is a life well lived. And it's certainly a question I'll be bringing to the Unconference in March to help those who come along, because it's fundamental to us, right? Again, we get to a stage in our lives where we think, am I doing the right thing? Is this all there is? Could I be doing more? Could I be being more? Am I living up to my potential? These are questions my clients have actually wrestled with me. So I know that I'm not alone in this, and this might be true for you. So I sat on the deck wrestling with this, going, what is a life well lived? This morning I got up, I rode my bike to the gym, and I was listening to Tim Ferriss's podcast. This is incident number 2, by the way. And I was listening to his podcast, and he was interviewing Jason Fried, who's the co-founder of Basecamp. And in this interview, Jason said that he doesn't have goals. He doesn't have KPIs. He doesn't have targets. And my brain went into, what? Are you serious? This is an incredibly successful company, and he doesn't have goals. He didn't even know what KPIs were, which I find like heart attack inducing, particularly as I advocate so strongly for the work of Stacey Barr, which is all about KPIs and developing measures that matter. So he talked a little bit about that. And he runs his business life a little bit differently. He says, no, we don't have goals. We don't have targets. He says, because those are all made up, right? And his example is, if you had a growth target of 22% and you got to 21%, you'd be disappointed. And he says, that's just crazy. That's just a made up number. Why would you list your happiness and and potential disappointment around a made-up number. And this was kind of a lightning bolt moment for me. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like coming back to the scale, right? It's like, why did I have this arbitrary number that I've picked out of a hat, more or less, that says, if I reach this particular weight goal, then I'll be happy. And I fall into the same old trap I teach my clients about, which is when I get this particular result, then I will be happy. The when then is such a nightmare. And Jason Fried was saying, well, we just don't do that. And Tim Ferriss asked him, well, how do you run a business if you don't have goals and targets? He said they run in 6-week cycles and they have 6-week projects that they focus on. And the aim of each project is to improve what they're doing for their business and improve what they're doing for their clients. That's it. And I thought, okay, you got to be measuring something. If you're measuring improvement, how do you know that it's improving things? So there's some indicators in there, I'm guessing. So it's a yes, Jason, and I think there's some other qualifications in there. As a principle, though, I think the key part of his message that I've taken for myself around this is what you're focusing on is about improving and of service to others. And I think that's the key takeaway for me. It's like, oh yeah, it's not about the number per se. It's about the purpose around all of this. And linked to that, paradoxically, is the third incident, which is I just started reading James Clear's new book, Atomic Habits, and I'm about 5 pages in, and I'm like, it's amazing. And I had really low expectations of this book, to be honest. I thought, yeah, another book around habits. How good could it be? And it's pretty good, I have to say. Like I said, 5 pages in. I'll do a book review on that in a later podcast. But in the meantime, I'm enjoying it. And a couple of things he said in there, which I think are interesting. He says that often we shoot for immediate results. And what we want is 1% improvements. 1% improvements day by day by day produces results in the long term, over a long term. And he says we can get obsessed with looking for results in the short term. So all this ties into me getting on the scale and going, it doesn't seem to be improving. The better strategy, he says, is not to focus on results, is to focus on the systems. If you're embedding the systems that produce the results and you're making 1% of improvement in the way that you handle those systems, the results will follow. But what you got to fall in love with is not the results, but the system. That you've got to enjoy the system, whether it's a system of marketing, whether it's a system of weight loss or health or whatever. That's the thing that you need to obsess around, is the system. So I found all this quite profound. And I've been incorporating some of these reflections in the work that I'm doing for the Unconference, definitely. And some of the work I'm doing for the Unconference is what I'm going to be sharing with you today, which are the 9 principles that amplifiers live with. Or live by, I think. Yeah, that's probably a better expression. Live by. I'm going to run through the 9 and take a deep dive on one of them. They're all going to be on the show notes, as well as the link to that Jason Fried interview with Tim Ferriss. And the show notes will be at zoerouth.com/podcast/9 principles. 9 principles. All right, here we go. So principle number 1 is live with a bias for joy. These are like life rules for me. I think there should be life rules for you too. That's why I'm sharing them. Live with a bias for joy. So as I'm sitting on my deck yesterday, I'm thinking, am I living with a bias for joy right now? No, I'm living with I feel like a sad sack. That's ridiculous. So when we take this principle and live with it, when we focus on our feelings as taking precedence, we realize the quality of our lives is dependent on the quality of our moments. And if we're not rigorous in how we're focusing, then we have these default feelings. And for me, yesterday, it was like feeling sad and lonely. It's like, well, that's not a quality moment. That's not a quality focus. And I'm not living with a bias for joy. And we don't need huge excuses for joy. So I was riding my bike today to the gym, and I'm like, it is beautiful out. This day is glorious. Do I have all the results that I was aiming for in my world? Well, no. And well, yes, because I'm alive and this is beautiful and life is good. So it was a good reminder to me to live with a bias for joy. All right, second principle. Who you are matters more than what you do. This has been said by a number of people on the interwebs, so I don't even have a definitive quote for you, except if it's that many people claim it as a quote, it's got to be a truism, potentially. In any case, I think it is an incredibly valuable principle. Who you are matters more than what you do. So this means that character, values, and energy create lasting influence. Let me say that again. Character, so who you are, values, what you hold as important and live by, and energy, how you're showing up. Are you a sad sack? Or are you a vibrant, vital, positive person? This produces more influence than anything that you accomplish, because results are temporary, but character and energy and presence, that's the stuff that inspires others to be better. And I think that's the most important thing. All right, principle number 3. Compassion is default center. What do I mean by that? When we live through the lens of compassion, compassion allows us to stay calm and centered. So if somebody gets up our nose, if we respond with a level of compassion, then we realize that this person's probably having a bad day, just like we can have bad days. And that stops us from reacting. That's really the most important thing to composure. So compassion, when it's your default center, everything is better from that place, because compassion is an expression of love. I think as leaders, if we show up with as expressions of love, it's getting good. All right, number 4. You know what? I have a feeling that I'm going to lose track of the numbers because I didn't number them on my notes. So I'm just preempting that. I may lose track of the numbers. But don't worry, there will be 9 listed on the show notes. Okay, I think this is 4. Capacity is key. So as an amplifier, as opposed to an achiever, and the key distinction between achiever and amplifier, achiever is focused on results in a temporary, short-term way. Amplifiers are interested in transformation, long-term transformation. And amplifiers know that capacity is one of the key things that they need to focus on. And so as amplifiers, we need to focus on what we can do to expand our thinking, like our thinking capacity, our thinking skills, if you like, how we can expand our beingness. How are we showing up as the best version of ourselves in energy, as in focus, as in values? And what are we doing? Are we expanding our capacity for doingness, our skills, our ability, our time management, our energy management? So it's all about expanding our capacity for ourselves and, critically, those around us. Because an amplifier knows they can't do it all on our own. And if we're not focusing on others and building their capacity, then we are limiting ourselves. And that's not what we want to do as amplifiers. So capacity is knowledge, skills, and attitudes associated with the ability to engage in leadership. And we should be developing that in ourselves and those around us. All right, principle number 5, maybe. Message drives service. Message drives service. Now, what do I mean by that? When we do the deep thinking around what matters most to us, i.e. our messages, when we do the deep thinking about what we stand for and what matters to us, what vision we have for the transformation, that drives service to others. It drives attraction to your mission. It drives other people to come on board with you. A few clear messages like that will help keep you and others focused on the right action. And the right action is always about improvement and service to others. Principle number 6, I think. Have a legacy without ego. What does that mean? I think legacy is an interesting word. Legacy sounds like ego, doesn't it? It's like, how do you want to be remembered? Is the synopsis for legacy, which sounds like I need to be remembered. But legacy is not about that. Legacy is about the impact that we want to make on the world. And it's not so that we're remembered. It's so that the impact on the world happens. So wanting to make a difference is not so much about how we will be remembered, but more about the transformation we want to contribute towards. And boundless leadership, let me just see what I wrote here. Boundless leadership legacy is to know that you contribute to something greater than yourself rather than to be known for your contribution. See, I had to read that out because it makes sense better than paraphrasing. Boundless leadership legacy is to know what you contribute to is something greater than yourself, rather than being known for your contribution. Well, there, I read it again and botched it. Basically, it's saying that legacy is knowing that you've made a difference, but not worrying that other people remember that you did the difference. Doesn't matter. It's really about what you're trying to achieve. Principle number 7, self first, not selfish. Now, this is a pretty critical one, and I wrote my very first newsletter on this topic about 16 years ago. And it's a fundamental one that I share with all my clients. Self first, not selfish. What this means is that we need to prioritize self-care because we need to have more of ourselves available so there's more of us to give. And we only do that by looking after ourselves religiously. So you can't drink from an empty well. And if your well is dry because you're giving everything to everyone else, you're going to burn out and fry yourselves. And that's one of the critical concerns for people who are achievers, is that they burn themselves out by giving too much of themselves. So self first is important. Now, people feel that that's being selfish. And being selfish is about putting yourselves first in spite of everybody else. That's what selfish is, looking after yourself in spite of everyone else. Self first is looking after yourself first, so there's more of you to give. Key distinction here. And so it helps people to remember that when you choose to take time out to go to the gym, or when you choose to take a break to have time on your own, or when you choose to basically do anything that is just for you, it's an investment in you, so there's more of you to give later. Makes sense, right? Okay, are you living it? I hope so. All right, principle number 8, and I can tell that this is the right number because I'm right at the bottom of my list now. And this is the one we're going to dive into a little bit more deeply. Results are for transformation. And it circles back to what I started the podcast with, is that results are not just for results' sake. Results as in an arbitrary number that we've plucked out of the sky or we think is the most important result. That's not what results are for. It's not to hit a target. It's not so that we can fist pump and say, yay, we got there. And it's interesting, though. We have all these sorts of different finite games that we play. And I don't have the quote in front of me, so I'll post that in the show notes too. Finite and Infinite Games by, I think it's James Carse. I could totally get that wrong, but I will definitely have the right link in the show notes for you. zoerouth.com/podcast/9 principles. He wrote a book called Finite and Infinite Games. And he talks about the finite games as the ones where, like, you're watching a football game, it's got goals, rules, and feedback, and it's over in 90 minutes. That kind of game is finite. An infinite game is where we're playing because of the joy of the game. And I think our work as leaders needs to be for the joy of the game, for the joy of contributing, for the joy of transformation, as opposed to the finite game of producing results. Now, you're going to hear Simon Sinek talk about this. Apparently, it's his next book. When I heard him speak last year, he didn't reference this seminal text, which I'm sure where his version of finite and infinite games came from. I hope he does the right thing and references it because it is the source. In any case, I will reference it properly on my podcast show notes. What game are you playing, finite or infinite? If we're just focused on results for themselves, targets for themselves, this is a finite game. And it gives us no joy. It gives us temporary joy, but not long-lasting joy. Infinite games where we're focused on the joy of the system, as James Clear says in Atomic Habits. When we're looking at what we can do to improve things for ourselves and for our clients, as Jason Fried said, then this is what matters most. So results are not just for achieving goals, because I think we need to play with some finite games. They are for creating a transformation. Creating transformation in yourself, in others, in a community, in business, to create a better state. That's what amplifiers do. They look to what is the transformation I want to create. It's not just about knocking goalposts, knocking goals through the goalposts or changing the goalposts. It's what is the transformation that we really want to create here? And let's create the joy of that through the system that we're developing and expressing and working in together to create this transformed state. Results are for transformation. This is a critical principle, and it will help keep us out of the when-then thing. Because if we're working towards a transformation, often this will live well beyond us. And we're not doing it so that we can necessarily see it in our lifetime. We want to see improvement towards that future state. If it happens in our lifetime, fan-bloody-tastic. The essence, though, is to play the long game, is to play the infinite game, is to create transformation that every day is a joy to contribute to. Right, last principle. Do what you say. I love this one. And I really resonate with this because it makes life so much easier. If you always do what you say, you have nothing to worry about. Your word is your bond. And every time I think about that expression, I think about Melania Trump when she gave her first lady speech, and she said, his word is your bond, or my word is your bond. Anyway, she was saying, it's all good. We live up to what we say. And it was a complete plagiarism. It seemed like a definite plagiarized from what Michelle Obama had said when she did her acceptance speech. It was just crazy. We saw that on the internet. In any case, regardless of whether Melania Trump said it or Michelle Obama said it, whoever else said it, it's an important principle, don't you think? Do what you say. And my mentor, Peter Cook, says, by always doing what you say, by speaking the truth that way, it forces you to be full of integrity. So you never have to worry, because if you say you're going to do something, you do it. And then you never worry about missing out on your promises and ruining your reputation. It also forces you to rigorously assess your commitments so that you only commit to the things that you know you're going to follow through on. Otherwise, you can't do it. And I love that. So it means that you're not casual with your word. It means that you're making genuine commitments to people. And I think about that. And I think, have I always been ruthlessly aware of my commitments? And do I always follow through? Ever since I adopted this as a principle, I'm much more aware of that. And I hope that I have not let anybody down. And that's why I've worked on taking better notes in terms of out of meetings, out of coaching sessions, to make sure I do actually follow through and do what I say. And it really irks me when people don't do that. When they say they'll do something and then they don't. This happened to me about 6 months ago, actually. I asked a friend, I thought, or a professional associate, to write a book review for me. And she said, yep, I will do that. And this is after she said to me, is there anything I can, we had a long conversation. She said, is there anything I could do for you? Because I was interviewing her. And I said, I would love a book review for my new book. She said, yep, I'll do it. She never did it. And I thought, wow, that's hurtful and also really surprising, because if someone builds a reputation on saying, I'm here to help you, how do I build a network in helping you? And then they don't do it, that's really bad. It's like really, it kind of like takes the tarnish off the relationship and off her reputation. And I think, I don't want to do that. I want to be someone who says if they're going to do something, they follow through and do it. And if we can't for some reason, whatever reason, that there's always an accountability circle around that. So I think that's a really important one. Do what you say. Okay, you want to have a quick review? All right, here we go. Live with a bias for joy. Who you are matters more than what you do. Compassion is your default center. Capacity is key. Message drives service. Legacy without ego. Self first, not selfish. Results of a transformation. And do what you say. Love it. 9 principles of an amplifier. We're going to dive deep into this conversation at the Unconference in March, and I would love for you to join us. It's going to be a really powerful group of people who come together, and it's not for everybody. It's for leaders who have reached that point in their world where they're not focused on completely achieving stuff all the time, and they're kind of wondering, is this it? What else? Or they're having that moment like I had on the deck. Am I living a life well lived? Am I doing everything I possibly can? Am I playing an infinite game or a finite game? If those are questions that you're wrestling with, the Unconference is for you, for sure. It's going to be a blast. And at the moment, we're still in launch price tickets. They end the 30th of November, unless they're all sold out before then. There's only 30 launch tickets available. So go to my website. You can find the Unconference there. Or you can go to the edgeofleadership.unconference.com.au and you'll find it that way. I will also post a link to that in the show notes. In the meantime, if you love this show and it is really doing stuff for you, I would love for you to rate it on iTunes. I know it takes a few extra moments of your time to press pause on your iPhone or whatever you're listening to and give it a rating and a comment. That would be absolutely bloody fantastic. This is a self-first request because it's looking after me, but in doing so, it's actually helping spread the podcast. And this is about legacy without ego. This is actually not about making me feel good. I want to know if this material is helping you, if what I publish is making a difference to you. Help others get access to it too. And the ratings actually do really help with that. So that's my humble request. It is, well, is it humble? Maybe it is. I don't know. Whenever people say they're humbly grateful for blah, blah, they're not really humble. So it is my personal request, if you're enjoying this podcast, to give it a rating. I really appreciate it. And I know you're awesome because you do. All right. Thanks very much, and live well, lead well.